How smartphones made bedside clocks unnecessary clutter. Picture this. It's 2006 and your nightstand looks like a miniature electronics store. There's your alarm clock, probably digital with those glowing red numbers that could light up a small room. Maybe it's got a CD player built in, or AM/FM radio, or if you're really fancy, an iPod dock. Next to it sits your cell phone, probably a flip phone or maybe one of those new BlackBerry devices, charging on its own separate cord. The alarm clock cost you anywhere from $30 to $200, depending on how many bells and whistles you wanted. It's been the bedside companion of choice for over a century, evolving from mechanical wind-up models to digital displays to these multimedia entertainment centers. But in just 8 short years, this entire industry would become as obsolete as the telegraph, crushed under the weight of a single device that could do everything better, cheaper, and in your pocket. The alarm clock industry in 2007 was actually thriving, pulling in over $400 million annually in the United States alone. Companies like Philips, Sony, and Jensen had built empires around the simple concept of waking people up on time. The industry had survived the transition from analog to digital, had embraced new features like nature sounds, sunrise simulation, and wireless connectivity. These weren't just timepieces anymore. They were bedroom entertainment systems. The top-selling models featured dual alarms for couples, battery backup systems, projection displays that showed the time on your ceiling, and even weather forecasts. Sony's Dream Machine line alone was generating over $50 million in annual revenue. Timex, the watch company that had dominated wrist timepieces, had successfully expanded into bedside clocks and was seeing double-digit growth year over year. The industry had weathered every technological storm for decades, from the rise of television to the personal computer revolution. What could possibly threaten such a fundamental human need? Then Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco on January 9, 2007, and held up a device that would make bedside alarm clocks as relevant as pocket watches. The iPhone wasn't just a phone, it was a computer that happened to make calls, and buried in its operating system was a clock application that could set multiple alarms, display the time in large, clear digits, and charge overnight just like any bedside clock. But here's what the alarm clock industry didn't immediately grasp. This wasn't just about replacing functionality, it was about consolidating an entire nightstand worth of devices into something people were going to carry anyway. Within 6 months, iPhone users were posting on forums about how they'd stopped using their alarm clocks. The phone was always charged, always accurate thanks to network time synchronization, and always within arm's reach. Why fumble for a separate alarm clock when your phone could do the job better? The smartphone revolution didn't just offer a better alarm clock, it completely reimagined what bedside functionality could look like. By 2009, the iPhone had introduced push notifications, meaning your device could wake you up not just at preset times, but when you received important messages or calls. Android phones, launched in 2008, quickly matched this functionality and added widgets that could display time, weather, and calendar information right on the lock screen. Apps like Sleep Cycle launched in 2009, using the phone's accelerometer to track sleep patterns and wake users during lighter sleep phases for a more natural awakening. This was something no traditional alarm clock could ever do. The phones were also getting louder, with better speakers that could rival dedicated alarm devices. Apple's iOS 4, released in 2010, introduced custom ringtones and alarm sounds, letting users wake up to their own music collection, rather than the generic beeping sounds that had tortured people awake for decades. Meanwhile, the traditional alarm clock industry was scrambling to stay relevant, but their attempts at innovation only highlighted how obsolete their core product had become. Companies started adding iPhone docking stations to their alarm clocks, essentially admitting that the phone was the real star of the show. Philips launched their Wake Up Light series, trying to differentiate with sunrise simulation technology, but smartphone apps were soon offering similar features using the phone's camera flash and screen brightness. Sony introduced alarm clocks with wireless connectivity and internet radio, but smartphones had been streaming music and radio since 2008. The industry's response was to make alarm clocks more expensive and more complex, exactly the opposite of what consumers wanted. While alarm clock prices remained static or increased, Smartphone functionality was improving exponentially every year, and the price of smartphones was becoming more accessible with carrier subsidies and payment plans. The death blow came between 2010 and 2012, when smartphones achieved critical mass adoption and manufacturers started optimizing for bedside use. Apple introduced Do Not Disturb mode in iOS 6, which allowed phones to silence everything except alarms, making them perfect bedside companions. Android introduced similar features with customizable quiet hours. Phone screens got bigger and brighter, making them easier to read in the dark than most traditional clocks. The iPhone 4, released in 2010, featured a high-resolution Retina display that made clock digits crisp and clear even from across the room. Charging technology improved, with phones lasting longer and charging faster, eliminating the fear of dead batteries causing missed alarms. By 2011, surveys showed that over 60% of smartphone owners were using their device as their primary alarm clock, and that number was climbing rapidly among younger demographics. The numbers tell the brutal story of an industry's collapse. Alarm clock sales peaked in 2008 at $412 million and began falling immediately afterward. By 2012, the market had shrunk to $287 million, a 30% decline in just 4 years. Major retailers started reducing floor space dedicated to alarm clocks, with Best Buy cutting their selection by half between 2010 and 2013. Amazon's bestseller lists showed the writing on the wall. By 2011, the top-selling alarm clocks were actually smartphone charging stands and docking stations. Traditional manufacturers were hemorrhaging market share to smartphone accessories that cost a fraction of what standalone alarm clocks sold for. Timex discontinued their bedside clock line in 2012, citing changing consumer preferences and market conditions. Jensen Electronics, once a powerhouse in bedroom audio and alarm systems, filed for bankruptcy in 2013, unable to compete with devices that offered superior functionality at no additional cost to consumers who were buying smartphones anyway. The psychological shift was perhaps even more devastating than the technological one. Smartphones had become such integral parts of people's lives that sleeping without them nearby felt unnatural. The phone wasn't just an alarm clock, it was a security blanket, a connection to the world, and a multi-purpose tool that could handle any middle-of-the-night need from checking the weather to calling for emergency help. Alarm clocks, by comparison, felt like unitaskers in an age of consolidation. Market research from 2013 showed that consumers viewed standalone alarm clocks as clutter and unnecessary when they could achieve the same functionality with a device they were already paying for and using daily. The bedside table was being minimized, with people preferring clean, simple surfaces rather than the electronic sprawl that had characterized bedrooms for decades. Even hotel chains began removing alarm clocks from rooms, recognizing that guests preferred using their own devices. By 2015, the alarm clock industry had essentially collapsed into two narrow niches: novelty items and luxury products for people who deliberately wanted to keep smartphones out of their bedrooms. Sales had plummeted to less than $150 million annually, representing a 63% decline from the 2008 peak. Major electronics retailers like Circuit City, which had carried extensive alarm clock selections, had gone out of business, though their demise was part of broader retail trends. The survivors were mostly cheap, basic models sold at discount stores, or expensive designer pieces marketed as furniture rather than functional electronics. Companies like Brookstone pivoted to selling smartphone accessories and charging stations, effectively acknowledging that the phone had won the bedroom battle. The few remaining alarm clock manufacturers were either absorbed by larger electronics companies or simply discontinued their products to focus on other categories. What made this industry killshot so complete was that smartphones didn't just replace alarm clocks. They made them irrelevant by being superior in every measurable way. They were more accurate, thanks to network time synchronization. They were more reliable, with battery backup and multiple alarm options. They were more customizable, with thousands of alarm tones, sleep tracking apps, and wake-up light simulations. They were more convenient, always within reach and always up to date. They were more economical, providing alarm functionality as a free bonus feature of a device people needed anyway. And they were constantly improving, with software updates adding new features that no traditional alarm clock could match. In less than a decade, smartphones had transformed from luxury gadgets to essential utilities, and in doing so, they had made an entire industry obsolete. The bedside alarm clock, which had faithfully served humanity for over a century, became another casualty of the digital revolution, a reminder that in the modern world, any device that does only one thing is vulnerable to being replaced by something that does everything better.